Hey guys, Jordan here. Today I'm reviewing my first OLED monitor, specifically the MSI MPG 272URX, but my thoughts in this video can also be applied to the 272UP, which is the same as this one except for the lack of USB hub and DisplayPort 1.4, and at the time of filming it's just $499. Before we continue, this section of the video is sponsored by MSI. MSI are currently offering a promotion where if you buy a selected monitor, including the one in this video, or selected desktop, you can claim a free copy of Resident Evil Requiem. To claim your copy, simply leave a review on one of the selected platforms down below. This runs until the 30th of March and I'll leave all the information in the description for you to check out. Thank you again to MSI for sponsoring this segment, and let's get back to the video. Now, instead of burying you in charts and measurement graphs, I'm going to be looking at this from a real world perspective, gaming, editing and everyday desktop use. But if you'd like to see more monitor reviews with more technical data, then please comment down below and we can look at adding that into future content. So the 272URX is a 27-inch 4K QD-OLED panel with up to 240Hz refresh rate, with a very sharp image and a high pixel density of 163 ppi, making it a great panel to use for gaming and editing, or even mixed use on PC and console, with its mixed inputs and built-in KVM switcher. The included stand is pretty basic and simply screws in from underneath. It does however retain all the adjustment that you'd usually expect. This also is VESA compatible as well. Looking at the screen, first of all, it is a gloss display, so it's going to be very shiny and an absolute fingerprint magnet. This is definitely going to be a case of positioning it on your desk and then try to touch it as little as humanly possible. In terms of inputs, we've got a 3.5mm headphone jack, 2 HDMI 2.1, one DisplayPort 2.1a, which has a 80GB port, allowing you to do 4K 240Hz without the need of display stream compression, which goes on and off by making the monitor blank periodically, something you may experience when you alt-tab in and out of a game. We've also got a USB Type-C port that has power through if you want to charge your devices. Then there's the USB hub. This monitor also has a built-in power adapter as well, so there's no need for an external one, keeping cable management nice and tidy. On the back of the monitor we've got a gloss MSI logo, and there's also an RGB zone. Don't worry though, this can be turned off if you're not a fan. At the bottom on the back we've got a easily controllable joystick to control the different menu options and settings. For those of you that want to see all of the different options, I have recorded that and we'll let this roll now, but of course feel free to skip forward if you want to continue with my thoughts. Now once I swap this display over to 240Hz, I jump straight onto the UFO test. It's obviously very hard to tell in camera being that this is filmed in 25 frames, but it was really buttery smooth. One thing you do need to remember though is with a 240Hz 4K panel, if you want to try and get 240 frames a second consistently, you're going to need a very high-end graphics card, something like a 4080, 5080 and above to keep those consistent frame rates. Or you're going to need a lot of DLSS or frame gen to bump up those frame rates to something that's sustainable at 4K at 240Hz. But of course you can go up to that and use that as a guideline. You may find you have to drop down your texture settings, quality settings if you are using a lower end graphics card, or like I said, a combination of frame gen to get the 240Hz consistently to ensure you're going to get the most out of the display. For some nice high frame rate gameplay, I used Apex Legends for this example and it was really smooth and consistent. Response rate as well was very low, 0.3 milliseconds, so you're going to get really fast response. Didn't notice any impact lag or anything like that either, which is obviously exactly what you want during competitive games. Apex Legends is usually a game that I use for the firing range, just simply for benchmarking. I do the same consistent run, so venturing out into an actual game is something that I do very rarely, and considering I don't play any actual versus gameplay, I think we'd actually did pretty well. And being OLED, it just looks really vibrant out of the box. There are loads of different presets as well. If you want to look at the menu settings, I did dive into those there. However, personally for me, I did like the Adobe RGB preset. As someone that does a lot of color correction and color editing, it's nice to know that this obviously is very accurate. I will touch more upon color and editing in a minute, but it does span 118% of the Adobe RGB color and 110% of the DCI-P3, so certainly something that could be useful for editors as well as gamers there as well. The high pixel density at MSI mentioned they certainly aren't kidding around with that either. Text is incredibly sharp, especially when you're using editing software or just doing emails and general everyday tasks. Everything is very crisp. Now, being that I mentioned this is my first OLED monitor, of course the blacks are going to be a big significant part of this review. Going from my IPS display, which is very washed out now looking at the two compared, this is obviously a big step up. Resident Evil is a really good game to demonstrate this on because obviously it's just a very dark game in general, and although the lighting that this particular shot is filmed in, which is with studio and overhead lighting, office lighting as well, isn't obviously the best example, it still does hold up very well and doesn't get washed out. Now, one thing that people always bring up with OLED panels is the burn-in, and that's fair. Certainly something that I would be concerned about looking at buying an OLED panel myself. MSI have got their built-in OLED care featured on the display, which handles things like pixel shifting, panel refresh cycles and general wear balancing in the background. As you can see here, it did pop up when I was just doing some general video of this panel, and it is a nice thing to just give you a bit of peace of mind to know that it's going to protect the panel over time. So for normal use, whether that's gaming, watching content or even some desktop work, knowing that there's built-in features to help prevent it really gives you peace of mind. Just also involves a bit of common sense. Just make sure you don't leave anything static on there all day and you should be golden. So jumping into some video editing, because it's an OLED panel, everything does look a little bit more saturated and punchy compared to a standard IPS display, so that's something just to be aware of when you're working on colour sensitive projects. That being said, the built-in presets like the Adobe mode really helps bring those back to a more neutral baseline, and for most people it's going to be more than enough. If you're doing really serious colour work, you may want to calibrate it properly, and that is something that I probably look at in the future, especially once I move bodies that I use to film with. But for now, using the presets has been absolutely fine. Going back to my usual monitor, everything just looks a little bit washed out in comparison, which kind of says it all. With content like shows on Prime, everything looks really clean, sharp and vibrant thanks to that 4K resolution and OLED panel. For movies like The Dark Knight, these look incredible. All those darker tones and shadows just have so much more depth and separation. This also works with things like Peaky Blinders, those darker, moodier scenes. You really notice how much detail you retain in the shadows without everything getting crushed. And then with films such as 1917, the combination of the darker trench scenes and the brighter outdoor shots really show off both ends. Deep blacks and really punchy highlights at the same time. I had a really hard job to not just let the film play and just watch this as I was trying to film the shots. It was actually really difficult to move on and film the rest of the clips. So as I mentioned, this has been my first experience with an OLED monitor and I've thoroughly enjoyed using it. The combination of the 27-inch 4K panel with a really high pixel density and of course 240Hz refresh rate makes it a really sweet spot if you're looking for something that can handle both high-end gaming and productivity. It also keeps the form factor a bit smaller rather than stepping into the 32-inch territory as well. Now it is worth mentioning that it's not perfect. For example, the gloss panel looks fantastic, but it does pick up fingerprints like there's no tomorrow and also can reflect light in brighter rooms. It's also not going to match the brightness that you'll get from a high-end mini LED, so if you're in a really bright environment, that's something to consider. To also really take advantage of the 4K 240Hz, you're going to need a pretty powerful system, so not everyone's going to be able to fully utilise it. And of course there's the OLED care features that run in the background, which are great for protecting the panel, but you just may occasionally get refresh prompts, but that's just part of the experience. Finally, it's not a cheap monitor, so it also comes down if you actually need everything that's on it. If you're not going to be using the KVM or the USB hub, but if you're like me not really using those features, you could save yourself a fair bit of money by going for something like the 272UP instead. That still gives you HDMI 2.1, so you can take advantage of the 4K high refresh rate on PC and consoles, but drops some of the extra features that not everyone's going to need, and it also comes in quite a bit cheaper as well. But overall, as a daily monitor, this has been seriously impressive. It's sharp, it's fast, it looks incredible, and just makes everything from gaming and content consumption feel that bit more premium. If you'd like to see some more content on this panel, be it a long-term review or something else, then please do let me know. As I mentioned, if you'd like to see more monitor content, we can look at different methods and go into some more depth with charts and testing and calibration and that kind of stuff. Please let me know your thoughts down below. I'll leave the links for this in the description box below if you want to pick one up. Big thank you to MSI for setting this out for me to look at. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.